Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another session with Focus on Liberia on the Marketplace, where we talk everything business, finance, and economics. I am your co-host, Gabriel Carter. Today, I'm in the studio with Jimmy Eastman. Today, we're going to be talking about the Unity Party economic plan. What is in an economic plan? Uh, what should be in an economic plan? Um, you know, how the plan was crafted and what are they going to do, but more importantly what we're trying to do is just dissect it to see whether it can pass what we call the water test, meaning that if you were in as an advisor, economic advisors, whether you will consider this a tangible thing that can be done, or is this just another uh, putting pen to paper for putting pen to paper's sake. So for here on the show, on this platform, or at least on Focus on Liberia on the Marketplace, what we like to do is just stick to the facts, sticks to the numbers, you know, you know, talk about everything that relates to business, finance, and economics. So this is what we're going to do with this plan. We want to talk about it. We know we have some colleagues here. That are Unity Party leaning. We were hoping that they were going to join us to kind of defend the plan. We invited some people, but we understand we are at the cross and the cross of election. This is what is it? A month away or 44 days away or less, right? So people are kind of tiptoeing around certain things. So we understand that they can't make it here, but nevertheless, we're going to do what we're going to do, which is take our time, go through this. It is a long document, 50-page long. So we pick what we think we needed to go through, and this is what we're going to go through what we're going to go through today. So wherever you are, as we like to say, take your time, share, and invite your friends to participate in the conversation, and also bring your comments and questions. Jimmy, welcome.
Yeah, Gabriel, thanks for having me. Uh, I find it interesting that what their document on how they plan to effectively improve Liberia's economic situation.
Mhm.
They have just taken at a glance.
Mhm.
They they're making certain broad statements,
Mhm. Mhm.
and my concern
Yeah.
is that I'm not sure if it is constructive enough. And I say this. Um, I'm also from an engineering background, and
Yeah.
Initially, I studied economics
Yeah.
at LU with some of the heavyweights that are in the country today. Uh, if you want to build a house,
Yes.
you have to first start with the foundation,
Aha. Okay.
and that is infrastructure.
Hmm.
And once you have the proper infrastructure,
Hmm.
then you can start building,
Hmm.
building on it and adding to it. So even though many of the things I see them, as we will get into it,
Yeah.
many of the things I see that they're citing,
Hmm.
they didn't show, for me, they didn't show me how they're going to build that foundation.
Yeah.
They didn't address that initial infrastructure.
Yeah.
I mean, for instance, it's easy to say to restore confidence in our monetary finances.
Exactly.
Yeah, that comes with a series of steps and procedures. That, but it didn't address the
How?
fundamental issues
Right.
that ailing our economy and
Right.
our people. So, without further delay, let's get into it, and then
Yeah.
we'll see what we can do.
Yeah. No, thank you. And I think you gave a better overview than I would have, that I was trying to give. And that's exactly, um, and this is, let me be, first, let me make the disclosure as I made to you behind the scenes. I am ANC supporter. I support Mr. Cummins. I'm sure most of you know that already. So I would be upfront with that from the get-go, but I also like to be fair. Um, when you put a plan out, it needs to have not just these aspirations that uh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, but also the how, right? The how is what people are looking for. So if, let's say, you said, I think you mentioned that, Jimmy, you say if you're going to do this, if you're going to build a house, you need to lay out the foundation. If you say you're going to restore confidence, like you mentioned, in the monetary system, you need to give the how are you going to be able to do that? Let's say if you say you're going to reduce corruption. How are you going to do that? If you say you're going to reduce corruption and that is going to save you some money, you need to say how much you think that is going to save you and what are you going to do with that money, right? And without trying to beat up these people, I think what most of us seek is that, hey, at least they have a plan. We can give them that. At least they have a plan. They put something out as a 50-page paper. But you got to be more, you got to give more, especially if you say that, you're vying for the top office of the presidency and you consider yourself as one of the top parties. You have to be able to put some meat on the bone of this document in terms of from the how perspective. And for me, I think this is just, without trying to beat up these people, this is just an aspiration document. You know, without it's like some areas when you look at it, it's just one paragraph. The up-led government will do such and such, and that's it. And then they jump to the next one. The United Party-led government will do such and such and such, and then I say they move on to the next part of the document. So I think they needed more meat on this document. But let's get into it. There's few questions we want to answer here, and as we like to say, we want to explore this thing. So I'll put no, not this one, right? So the question that we want, first question we want to look at here is, what is an economic plan, and what should be in it, right? Uh,
Yeah,
and what should it be, right? Jimmy,
an economic plan.
right?
Well, basically, an economic plan is steps that you want to follow
Hmm.
to impact and change the economy.
Yes.
So, economic plan will address aspects of the economy
Hmm.
that you will focus on
Yeah.
to bring about development.
Mhm.
For instance, the agriculture industry, you'll probably have plans for that sector.
Mhm.
You may have plans for the industrial sector,
Mhm.
plans for the business sector,
Mhm.
and plans for healthcare.
Mhm.
You know that the healthcare sector is also important. The educational sector.
Mhm.
So all these sectors will be addressed in the economic plan generally, and as such, you hope by implementing the plan,
Mhm.
you will realize the goals. So one of the goals of the first and foremost, the goals of the plan should be
Mhm.
mentioned from the jump.
Yep. Yep.
So if we look at what the Unity Party has said here, they said when Liberia had its first peaceful political transition,
Yeah.
you know, Liberians and Friends are hopeful that they will have a sustained peace.
Mhm.
But they have observed that the Liberian economy has been performing poorly
Mhm.
during this period due to decline in
Power.
purchasing
Yep.
power.
Yep.
In other words, the Liberian dollar
Yeah.
is being devaluated, or increased vulnerability of employment in the private sector, and insecurity of tenure of civil servants
Mhm.
and other public servants. Real GDP declined by 1.2%
Mhm.
and further contracted by 2.5%. Okay, so they're identifying um, the downturn in the economy, and also they are saying that to fix it, they're going to use the United Nations agenda that they adopted, or what they call the SDG, the Sustainable
And
Development Goals.
yep.
Now, for me, that is already a disaster from the
Mm.
jump, and I'll tell you why.
Yes, please.
Your plan has to be unique to your country.
Exactly.
That global approach that the United Nations is reaching, it's necessary, but it applies better in certain places and than others. So your plan, as you say, aligning with the sustainable goals. If you were to bring up the sustainable goals, you'd be surprised. But I think there's 17 in total,
Yep. There is.
and yeah,
It is. There's 17 of them.
yeah, and is that what Liberia needs? Let's talk about it for the sake of the audience. What
Yep.
these goals are, okay? Let's be
Yes.
fair. Let's
Yep.
talk about it.
Yep.
The sustainable goals are. Let's see. Let me see if I can find it real quick here.
Let me see if I can pull it up.
Here it is. The 17. We're right. It was 17, and we're gonna go over it briefly because this is what they're using. So here are the goals: no poverty, zero hunger,
Yep.
good health and well-being,
Hmm.
quality education,
Yep.
gender equality, clean water and sanitation,
Yep.
affordable and clean energy,
Hmm.
decent work and economic growth, industry innovation and infrastructure, reduce inequalities, sustainable cities.
Hmm.
We have to build a city before we talk about being sustainable. Responsible consumption and production,
Yep.
climate action, life below water. We're talking about the under the aqua life,
Yeah. Aqua
marine life,
life. Yep.
life on land,
Yep. That's
peace and
sustainable.
justice, and
Yep.
strong institutions,
Yep. And
and
partnership
partnership
for
for the
goals.
goals.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so it is a wide array,
Right.
and I mean, we may you may use it as a somewhat of a guide, a little bit,
Mhm.
but you're going to need a detailed strategy to do it.
Yeah. And to piggyback on what you were saying, so what an economic plan should be, I think you rightly highlighted that. Um, but what something important that you said that I want to, maybe buttress as well, right, is that a plan, an economic plan, should be tailored to the country specific, right? The moment we start reading their document now and see that um, it is being tailored, it is being modeled after the sustainable development goal, that means you have reached a place. First of all, I would say this: there was this millennial development goal that ended in 2025 2015, right? They had an agenda to end poverty. 2015, they never achieved that, and so they morphed it into sustainable development goal, which now goes up to, I think, 2025, right? And we're going to 2025 again. We will not have eliminated poverty in the world. So that goal is going to be morph again. So if you are looking at these uh, gradation and improvement, well, if you want to call it improvement, changes in goals that these organizations are putting out there and they're failing to accomplish anything, and you now take your economic plan and model it after that, that tells me what the end result of that plan is going to be. So that's one thing I wanted to say. And again, that for me, it's what spells disaster if you look at your plan. That means you really don't understand what the country needs. And again, as I said, one of the questions that we want to ask is, what does Liberia need? So I think that's a good segue into our next question. If you don't know what should be in an economic plan, right? Or what it should be, then that means you don't understand what are the important things in the country, which I think should be our next question there of what the country actually needs right now, Liberia actually needs. Um, so let's jump into that. So the next question here, before we get into that, to be the plan, if as you look at it, you know I was going through it and I saw, you know first, they try to do the right thing, which is to account for what they did in the last 12 years. Some of the things they're trying to do, which is to eliminate that. They talk about building schools, bringing people, I think training 6,000 uh, teachers in the country. They talked about the hold on, let me see my notes here. They talk about the number of doctors in the country, which was 51 to 4.5 million people, right? I don't know, if I were you, if I were them, I would want to put that on an economic plan, because some kind of accomplishment. 51 doctors to 4.5 million people, that's 88,235 people to one doctor. If you look at the what's considered a city is anything 30, I think 40,000 or more. So you have two city, the equivalent of two city to one doctor, and you're listing that as some kind of accomplishment. You know, so eh, I'm sure they wanted to, kind of show their previous, accomplishment, to say this is what we were able to do, and so this is what we're going to do going forward. But I think for me, that alone itself was a failure. In a country of 4.5 million people at the time, you only have 51 doctors. That is, you can do the ratio. It's 1 to 88,000. So, um, and if in the beginning stages of their plan, you also they also talk about five pillars, right? Let me go over them real quick. The first one was they talk about macroeconomic and stability, macroeconomic stability and infrastructure development. Um, they have a slew of bulleted item under that plan. Ensure efficient economic management, engage in prudent fiscal management, restore confidence in our monetary system. You know, it's like it's just what we call a grocery list of things, right? And the second pillars they talk about health, wash, like literally to wash. I don't know what that means. I think I kind of read up on that a little bit. Environment and climate change. I have something to talk about the wash there later on, maybe later on, because I thought it was hilarious. Then the third one to talk about human capital development, right? The fourth plan is governance and rule of law. Uh, and their fifth is and final is the gender, youth, and social protection plan. Um, so that is pretty much their plan listed uh, in this document that makes up the 50 pages. And I said with the number of things they have listed on each plan, this should be over 200 or 300 page document to say the least, but it's only 50 pages because as I said, some of them are just one paragraph for each item. The United Party government will do such and such. That's it. Know how or how that is going to be done in terms of duration, quantifiable plan that you can measure and say this is a quantifiable plan that you will be able to measure later on. There's no such thing, right? So that is their preamble, right? They give the history, then they give the preamble to the document itself. But without further ado, let's jump into, you know, a better way to help us answer that question is to understand is what do we think Liberia need at this moment? You know, so the reason why I think we should explore that question is if you know what the country needs and the people need, you will be able to craft the plan towards it, right? You will be able to
Right.
take now that understanding to say, okay, I understand what the country needs. This is what we're going to do to meet the needs that we have assessed in our country. You know, so from your conversation with Liberians and what you've seen in the country, I'm sure you have people that you talk to regularly, and whether you talk to them regularly or things you read about our country, what do you think this country need at this moment, especially now during this election?
Okay. I mean, you go directly to the bread and butter issues.
Hmm.
Um, People have to uh, eat,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And in order to eat, you have to earn your living. You have to earn a living.
Yeah.
So one of the primary things that we have to address
Hmm.
is enabling, you know, people to be able to earn a living.
Right.
And that is not going to be solved by simply employing everybody. You cannot, the government cannot employ everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. So what can the government do to stimulate job growth in
Hmm.
the country
Hmm.
without directly employing them? So the first thing you will do is to carry on projects,
Hmm.
okay, infrastructure projects
Yeah.
that will allow Liberians to participate. And not only will these projects employ Liberians,
Yeah.
but it will also lead to various industry growth around the projects. Okay, like if you build a road, people will be able to work the road, but
Hmm.
all the businesses around there, around the road project also will benefit.
Correct.
So carrying on projects is one way to um, help build, grow jobs. Another
Yeah.
way to grow jobs, you were just talking about Larry. That Larry is watching from his recovery room, he says. Um,
Nice.
yeah,
Okay.
Larry, we're glad you're following. Come on anytime if you can. Another way to stimulate job growth in the
Right.
country
Right.
is to provide economic incentive for business expansion.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, if, for instance, if you allow businesses to come in the country and for the first 3 to 5 years, they pay no taxes,
Hmm.
okay?
That's
They
incentives.
will, this will attract investors.
Hmm.
And when they come and open their businesses, in turn, they employ Liberians.
Hmm.
Now, you can put a clause in that these businesses have to meet a certain quota.
Yep.
In other words, employ a certain amount of Liberians there. We don't want businesses to come and bring expatriates here
Expand.
and
Yeah.
no. So you're allowing these businesses to not pay taxes because they will employ a certain amount of Liberians. So that's the other way is to provide incentives to businesses, and and then another way to for job growth. It takes a little longer. Is to human capital investment. You train them. You open trade schools.
Hmm.
I support formal education, but I think we need more trade schools. That once a person learns a trade, they may not have a job immediately, but
Hmm.
they will always be able to work a job if given the opportunity.
Hmm.
So those are some ways to encourage job growth. But I think can we, if we allow ourselves to segue a little bit,
Yeah, that's fine. We can go on a tangent.
Gabriel.
Yeah.
I think we need to show that there's a difference between growth and development.
Ah, please. Yeah.
Okay. Now, growth is just a positive change in the economy, like
Hmm.
maybe increase in GDP, you know, and maybe a per capita income.
Yep.
Those are signs of growth. All right. It's just
Hmm.
getting bigger,
Yep.
but it doesn't really develop the country. Now, development is more a qualitative change. All right.
Hmm.
You're talking about improving the standard of living. Okay. You're talking about people becoming more happy with their lives. Okay.
Hmm.
You're talking about providing, you know, equal access to resources, enabling participation in economic activities.
Hmm.
It's changing people's lives. You can grow and people's lives still be suffering and poor, but when you develop, you change the state of people's lives. You improve their livelihood, and that is more difficult to do. So
Yeah.
this plan that the Unity Party has come with, they do touch a few things. If you can see in Pillar 3, they talk about strengthened educational systems,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That will improve the quality of education,
Hmm.
right? And in Pillar 1, they talk about ensure efficient economic management, promote forestry. It's it's it it it's good, but I don't see it directly impacting um, Liberians. What you asked, the first one fundamental things they need jobs. They need to
Hmm.
be able to work. They need to be able to earn a living.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. The
Yeah.
other thing we need health care,
Yeah.
right? So though they do address it in this document, Um, but how they're going to go about it? Because healthcare is expensive,
Very.
very expensive. So
Yeah.
how are we going to sustain that? Where are we going to get the money? That is why for me, I attack things that will bring money first. Because
And you
without
have,
money, you can't
yeah,
do anything.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. No, thank you. And I'm glad you went on this segue. And it is a great segue you went on because I I like to tell people that, and that's true. That is true. I didn't grow up in Liberia. I was born there, but I didn't grow up there. I was about 5 or 6 when I left. So the reason why I tell people that is because I didn't read up on the country history going to school there until I came here. For the last 5 years, that's what I've been doing, right? And not just the historical part of, who were the president, but more of the economic history of it, like because you looking at your country now, you say, hey, we're over 100 years, 175, 76 years old. Why is it we are where we are, right? And I think for me that's why are we here, and the rest of the country are way ahead of us when we're older than all of them, over 100 years, right? So I started reading up on that, and I like to tell people this because it gives a fascinating story as it's as to what you were just saying in terms of the growth without development. I don't know most people know this. At one point in history, in the 60s, we were the second highest growing economy in the world. In the world, the second highest. Not one, not two, not 3 years, but 8 years in a row, the second highest. That's how good we were. When you talk to, I like to talk to my mom about these things. When I talk to her, it's what you can hear most other older librarians call the normal days, right? Where different people from different part of Africa used to go to Liberia. They used to call you, talk to them. They said, my mom would say Liberia was, like a mecca. People from different part of the continent will come here to study, to even make a living here. The reason why I brought that up because of what you said, the growth without development. So because of that growth, 8 years growth, you know what happened? Different people from part of the country, even from here, right here in the United States, from the Chicago Booth School of Economics, right? They went to Liberia to study Liberia. What is this country doing so much that they're growing? They're the second highest growing economy in the world for not just one year, but 8 years straight. And they found out exactly what you just said. There was growth, but there was no development. And we can argue if somebody want to argue with that point, point them towards the infrastructure we have. There was none. All that 8 years of growth that we had of money pouring into that country, where at one point the exchange rate was with the US dollar was 1 to 1, we did nothing with it, right? So it confirmed what you just said: growth without development. We grew, but we did not develop anything. We grew from a economic standpoint, but in terms of putting tangible structures in place that will last maybe 100 years or 200 years. That even if war happened, you will still go there and say, "Oh, these people developed the country before. It's just the war that kind of, you know, uh, destroyed it. But we can build up on it." None of that ever happened. So that confirms the case that you're saying, about the growth without development. And since we're on the United Party case, that's exactly what they did in the last 12 years that they were in power. There was, when you talk to people, I like to talk to people. People can quote numbers in front of you and say, "Oh, look at numbers," because anybody can manipulate number to tell their story, right? But as a professor used to tell me, when you run your models, leave from behind the models and look at the reality on which you're running your models. Talk to people, they will tell you the same thing of the last 12 years. There was no development. They listed even in this plan that we're reading, 38 megawatts of hydropower, 38 megawatts. We had almost over 10 billion inflow in our country for the 12 years, but we're boasting of 38 megawatts. We get most of the Maryland get, and Nimba County get most of the electricity from the Ivory Coast. The megawatts we had, the hydro right now, cannot even supply the entire Monrovia, let alone the rest of the country. Again, we grew because if you look at the IMF numbers that they put out, the projections, 4%, 4.5, 3.5, 2, 2.9, 3, 4, 5. It's growth. Potential is there, but we never amount to it. Nothing tangible ever happened. The impact, as I think you mentioned it, it never translates to the people, right? It never translates to the people. Let me say this last thing, and I will, you can come in. Since one of the things you mentioned as well, which is something that is very important when we're talking about what the country needs. What I like to tell people, and I think I may have discussed this with other people as well, is that you and myself on this screen right now, everybody that's watching us, right? The basic thing that we need to sustain ourselves. So self-actualize. You mentioned that too. You alluded to that. You mentioned that. Now I alluded to it. You mentioned it. Jobs. Without it, we're nothing. We reduce ourselves to, we cannot, as my dad liked to say, if you want to kill a man, take away his ability to earn, right? Without that, we cannot provide not just for ourselves, but our family, especially in this environment that we're in, like especially for Liberia. This is exactly what every Liberian needs. The politics, you belong to this party, you belong to that party, you belong to this tribe and that, all of that, to this group and that group, all of that is nothing if you cannot self-actualize. If you cannot come from school, you cannot graduate from college and get a job to take care of yourself or your family. None of that will be anything without it, right? So for me at this moment, one of the most important thing I think anybody or candidate should focus on is jobs, 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 and how to not just any old job, but sustainable jobs that you can work, make a living on, retire on, and self-actualize on. To take care of your family. So I think that's one of the most important things that this country needs. Second thing is to right now we have a big problem with corruption. We've had that forever, and is endemic in our country. Right. So that's one of the things they need to focus on when we talk about plugging, Mr. Cummings always talk about plugging the holes, plugging the leaks to put stop to some of those things. Right. But for me, I think what candidates should be talking about is jobs, how to create jobs, and how to make sure that every Liberian who is coming, is born in our country or, is a Liberian that lives in Liberia who wants to work has a job and can have a job and be able to self-actualize in our country. So for me, I think that is among other things, but that is should be the number one target point of any candidate in this election. So I will leave it on that. I think you may have been wanting to come in.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the comments. I've heard this thing from what Edison Pajibo is saying. Yeah, a country that makes English compulsory and agriculture an option will speak very good English on an empty stomach. You know,
Mm.
there are several reasons why the agricultural sector has to be focused on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, back in the day, the Western nations, they had this theory that if you don't have a comparative advantage of being in the industry, you shouldn't. In other words, if it costs $15 to produce one bag of rice in Liberia,
Mm-hmm.
okay, if it costs $15 to produce it, and it costs only $3 to produce it in China,
Mm-hmm.
then Liberia shouldn't focus on rice production.
Thank you. Yep.
Leave it with China. But this is it's a folly though, because if you can't feed yourself, you have become you're dependent on another
Passion to feed.
nation.
Right.
So even if you don't have a comparative advantage, it is exigent that you feed yourself. We have to be able to feed ourselves. So when in the 1950s, you know, when we started seeing an economic boom in the world, when they were extracting our iron ore,
Hmm.
we did not focus on agriculture. Even
Yeah.
though we saw this boom, that was when we were supposed to uh, focus on infrastructure development in agriculture and in other industries, you know, but we did not, and that's why we're suffering to today.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't sought. So I do see agriculture being mentioned on in the Unity Party document, but let's not forget how challenging agriculture is. Again, I told you, for many things we do not have a comparative advantage. So how much are we going? Should we invest in this? How should we? In places like India, they did land reform.
Hmm.
In other words, they cooperated together, and one tractor could have cleared or plowed 15 farms all by, because they're all cooperative
Yeah.
development.
Yeah.
Uh, so that the UN and the world has observed that for if you want to improve agriculture, you may need land reform to do it. So when they talk about improving agriculture, they have to give us the details. How do you plan to do it? Because it's not an easy task.
Yeah.
You know,
And let
how do
me
you plan to do it?
let me say this. And as I said, I think you're good at you're good at like you kind of have a fast attention stuff to retain stuff because I went through the document and as you talk to certain points in it, that's when I start remembering that, oh yeah, I read this part, right? The agriculture part they talk about in the document is first, I like to look at, you know, the history. First they talk about they have a registry of uh, 5,000 farming household at the time, that the last 12 years, and they want to create that. They want to do the same thing where they talk about the National Agriculture Investment Plan, right, which is to create a registry of 5,000 farming household, which would translate to I think 57,000 or more farmers, cooperative small stakeholders farmers, right? Now, this administration, this government, or this party has a history of, we can look at the history to compare it to the document. The candidate, Mr. Boakai, you talk about how difficult it is to do agricultural business. It's very difficult. He has a history of, if you heard about, I don't know if you heard about the PL 80, PL 480, right? It
Sure.
was, right? I'm sure you heard about it, right? So it was a partnership with the US government and the government of Liberia. It was 400, the total commitment was $440 million at the time. That I think it was in the 80s. The US was pledging to Liberia. I think it was over 10 years, right? Equivalent to today's dollar, making up for inflation, that's almost $1 billion. I think it's $880 million. 66 million, I still remember this thing because I kept reading. 66 million was going to the military alone, right? That partnership supposed to create make Lofa a, a rice producing region, the agriculture region, right? Because of history of corruption, what the United States said was that the US, they open an account, a joint account. The US government will put their portion in, and the Liberian government will put their portion in. That sum of money would have been taken to develop the infrastructure, the agriculture business in Liberia, in Lofa. What happened when the US government put their portion of the money in? We ended up stealing that money. and nobody knew what happened to it. At the time, you know who was in charge of the LPMC? The current candidate. It's a Boakai. People don't like to talk about that, because I understand we have this respect thing for older people, which is we should, but also what we should do if somebody who's older than you make a mistake, you should be able to tell them politely that hey, this was a mistake you made, and you should take account for it, and you should own up to it and take responsibility for it. That money disappeared, and the U.S. government did not recover it. The state that I'm living in, Massachusetts, the senator at the time, Senator Kennedy, he was the one who ordered an investigation. That investigation is what contains in that report of how we abused that 440 million, which was equivalent to $1 billion at the time, in today's equivalent of money. So if someone with that record history of mismanagement is now putting a paper together to tell you that, oh, this is what I'm going to do when I take over as a president, you will scratch your head. You will start having second thought, right? Imagine me having that kind of record and coming to you and say, Jimmy, this is what I'm going to do. The first thing you start, Gabriel, please, you- let's talk about what happened in the past. You made that mistake. How are you going to learn from that and correct what you say you're doing on paper, what you say you will do now? What has changed? You know, so looking at that history and looking at their agriculture plan to say this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do, and also looking at what they did in the last 12 years, nothing. We're still struggling with rice import. We're still importing rice. Not only rice import, basic stuff. The pepper, basic food. We still import those things from Guinea. We have carry, which was found. I think it was founded under them or existed before them. Carry has been. Nobody knows what carry does right now. Nobody know what they did before. So looking at those history, and here is a party that is telling you that this is what they're going to do, leads me to believe that this is all a fluke. This is a fluke. This is just as the document I was reading, with all of those things, but only 50-page document, which are just one liner paragraph saying we will do this, I will do this, I will do this, I will do this without any specific details. That's how I equate their
Mm.
agriculture plan. And anybody in the audience, on watching us, who wants to come and defend that, they're more than welcome to do that. But that's what I wanted to say about their agriculture plan.
Yeah, but
Right.
in his defense, when did he become? I know he was responsible in LPMC, but then later I think he was promoted to Minister of Agriculture,
Yeah.
right?
So yeah, when that happened, that's when they let him go from that. That's when they I think he was reshuffled to the other one was the LPRC or whatever it's called. But he was let go because of that investigation. It's out there. I'm not making stuff up. This is an old man who's been in the government for a long time. I will not one of the people that just come on and make lies up about people without knowing. It is a US authorized investigation that is out there. And they don't talk about it, but it's on his record. He was in charge. Right. Yeah.
I think I really appreciate what Larry commented. He said CDC and Unity Party are offering aspirational plans that are heavy on hope. So as a technocrat, he's telling you, well, this is a lot of hope. It's not solid engineering to get this thing accomplished. But since you mentioned the PL40, I want to read you. This thing came out in 1985. It was
Hmm.
a report
Yeah.
on the PL40 project in Liberia.
Hmm.
And then at the time, Mr. John Palmier was the
Hmm.
acting director of USAID. Okay, the
Okay.
PL40 came through USAID, right?
Yep. Yep.
So it said, Dear Mr. Palmier, this report discusses results of our audit of the PL 480 Title I program to Liberia from 1980
Hmm.
to 1984.
Hmm.
The objectives were to determine Government of Liberia compliance
Hmm.
with the PL 480 agreement,
Yep.
including the use of sales proceeds to support development projects and help and self-help measures to improve the lives of the rural poor.
Yep.
So the PL 40 was given for self-help to improve the lives of the rural people
Yep.
and carry on other projects. That was the whole purpose. And it goes on to say the government of Liberia substantially complied with the agreement in the early program years.
Early program. Yes.
So
Right.
this is from 1980 to now. You remember the coup happened in 1980.
Yeah. It happened
So
in 80. Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
So
Yep.
in early program years, it complied.
Right.
Okay. Since 1982, however, serious liquidity and economic problems caused shortfalls in the PL 480 account,
Yep. That's
amounting to about 16.5 million at
exactly.
in March 1985.
Yep.
The lack of funds has caused problems in the development projects
Hmm.
which were dependent on the PL 480 proceeds.
Hmm.
We found the government of Liberia agent responsible for the PL 480 Title One sales transferred about 1.1 million
Yep.
in rights to government organizations without requiring payment, and had accounts receivable up to 14.4 million due from credit sales, of which only about 7.4 million was considered uncollectible. The government of Liberia also failed to submit required reports on self-help measures taken pursuant to the 4L, the PL 480 title agreement. So you see, this was they were giving us this rice
Yeah.
to tell us to sell it and put the money in these projects.
Yep.
And later on, no one could they weren't accounting for the money. They weren't accounting for the projects, and as a result, let me conclude.
Yeah.
We are
Go for it.
recommending that you say Liberia not award additional PL 480 Title One assistance until the government of Liberia reestablishes the special account, deposits the outstanding sales proceeds. Also, USA should exercise greater control over future PL 4080 programs. Therefore, we are making recommendations on releases from the special account, government credit, and sales policies. So they suspended it because we
Yeah.
were not complying.
Hmm.
Now, um, you would have if you said we didn't have a chance. We've given people what is going wrong, and this is what the Unity Party will have to deal with. There is administrative problems within the government and organizations. There are administrative problems. There's a lack of accountability. There's a lack of transparency, and so when programs are implemented, they fail. So you have a critical administrative. How that was what I wanted to see in this document because it talks about ensure efficient economic management. How are you going to do that when people are not getting paid? People are paid very little, and so anything they we have a saying back in Liberia, where you tie good, that's where we eat.
Hmm.
How are you going to change that culture? How are you going to reverse this? That is what we want to see because you will have that problem day one in Liberia. And the previous administration, the previous UP administration, acknowledged that that was a problem. That was, what did she call it? Nightmare or boogeyman? What she gave it a
Yeah.
name.
Yeah. That's what exactly what you call it. It was a boogeyman. Yeah. Yeah.
So what are they going to do about it? And that's 16 now. What are they going to do? To change that. I would love to see it, but they didn't outline that in the in this report.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
the,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
the only way to correct this behavior is to punish it.
Mm,
It's no joke. There's
yeah.
no other way. So unless you're going to have some serious penal actions against people who do not comply with law and order, then it's bound to fail. So as Larry says, it's aspirational.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to piggyback on. And I think you've been saying that before. Even Larry said that, right? And I think anybody who reads this document as a technocrat, as a people of structure, like engineer or technocrat, like Larry, you guys will pick that up. Anybody will pick that up. That these are just aspiration and hope. That's what a preacher do on the count on the pulpit. You know that you're not a preacher. You know you shouldn't be selling hope and aspiration. You know you should be about offering tangible things and how you're going to accomplish them. Unless you want to go stand on a pulpit with Bible in your hand and preach, you're not selling hope here. These are lives that are involved. That you're being accountable. If you will be accountable for, and your plan should be the farthest thing from our aspiration or something that create hope. Yes, you can offer aspiration and hope, but in addition to that, the meat of that document should be things that are tangible, the how of how you're going to do what you're offering in those aspiration.
Mhm.
So, all right. So let's Larry's busy from that recovery room. I think the recovery is, we can assume that the recovery is going well. So yeah, I'll offer another one here. He said under the CDC, under the Propo agenda, the UN estimate 200,000 Liberians became poor, right? Which is true, right? Um, and I think their minister said that they lifted 27 million people out of poverty. Well, only 4.5 million, barely 5 million. All right. Um,
Gabriel, we don't we hope this is not simply an economic exercise. I mean,
right.
an academic exercise.
Right.
You write these reports. I mean, even in my undergrad, I could have done something more detailed than this. I want to be honest with you.
Ah. Yep.
Even my undergrad,
Hmm.
without, and this is supposed to be a living document compiled by one of most um, the strongest political parties.
And some of the
And
brightest people in that party. I didn't want to go there, but I'm glad you opened that floodgate. Please go ahead.
yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to say it's got no teeth. It's wishful thinking, but it's
Yeah.
got no teeth.
Yeah.
So if they're going to do something, I implore them, if you're going to do something, give their plan some teeth.
Yeah.
There's gonna have to be some concrete stuff you will have to do. This is right it's superficial,
Yeah.
but we hope that when we see the implementation, things will be different.
Yeah. So, and Larry offer up here again. He said the UP government, the United Party is relying on a failed concession agreement strategy to raise capital to fund its aspiration. Uh, the Liberian dollar is near its lowest value in nearly 2 years. That means Liberians need more Liberian dollar to pay for basic goods. That is, as he said, is inflation, right? And one of the things that is lacking in this document is anything that has to do with, like you said, missing teeth. Some of that teeth is one of the tooth in our document that is missing is the economic plan, which is to which Larry is speaking here. Nothing on the economic plan, nothing on the financial sector as to how they're going to restore that. Right.
Gabriel, if you notice, just the other day they were talking about the Asa Middle in the Western Cluster,
Yeah.
and Larry is mentioning this. They are doing a lot in the extractive industry, the
Hmm.
mining,
Hmm.
but they're not developing the people.
Yeah.
They're not developing the area.
Hmm.
This is this is a danger because Believe me, when you have growth without development, that deepens inequality and has dangerous socio-political consequences that could even undermine the very freedom and democracy of the country.
Hmm.
We keep seeing the same things happen again and again. And you ever wonder why? Why are
Mm.
we repeating the same mistakes as before? Why is none of the money that's gained from the Western culture exploits? Why is nothing being plowed back into those communities? Why? Why are they
You know,
doing that?
do you know why?
Why?
As I said, for me, anything you want to know, if you tell yourself you want to know something, right, you will know it. And the reason why I say that is because, like I said, I've made it a journey to learn about this country economic history. So let me be quick and tell you this why I kind of interjected. So the cluster, these concession deals, right? I think they were signed under Mr. Boakai when he was the vice president who was overseeing the Senate at the time. Uh, there were 68 of them. Uh, the report that came out says 66 of them were bogus. And that is a claim they continue to deny. But as I said, when somebody says something and you deny it, people can always go deeper and find out why. So let me tell you. So these concession, and when you read, I hope I have two of them. I will send them to you after the show, so you read them. They to say they are bogus is an understatement. So let me tell you why. So remember how you said it's supposed to benefit the people in the community, in those region, in those county. So imagine you have an iron ore concession in, let's say, Bomi, mining Bomi, going through Bomi, but the only things, the benefit to the county that are put within that contract was a $3 million road development that will lead from there to transport, to allow them to transport the the minerals. One. Another $1.5 million to the county itself. Another, I think, 500. Just compared to the minerals that they're getting in that counties. 3 million here, 1.5 here, 500,000 here, 200,000 there. It is nothing. That's like somebody taking $1 million and they say, "Oh, I was just gonna give you $100 from your county." Nothing. And one of the things you mentioned is that once those things are depleted, they take it from there, they mine those minerals out of there. That place become empty soil that has been turned over. No way to develop or replenish it to make it, rejuvenate again, right? That's one thing. But let me tell you the meats and bounds of these two concessions that I read. First, I will tell you about the structure, and that's when I saw that I saw the former Chief Justice, I think Dean, what Musa Dean's signature on it. I kind of held my head as to a lawyer at that level, a counselor at that level, not understanding how these things are structured, but you just go and sign off of it, right? So let me tell you how the people structure it. And this is why when they said Liberians were robbed in those things, we were literally robbed. Two, they set it up as we will set up a management company here in the States. So you have a parent company. The parent company was based, I think, in the US or so. That parent company had a subsidiary in Liberia that registered in Liberia. The subsidiary is the one that signed the agreement with the government of Liberia. But the structure, the subsidiary in Liberia, pays a management fee to the parent company. So why is that a problem? So let's say now the subsidiary in Liberia mines $100 of, of minerals. They're paying a management fee 50%. I think it was either 50% or 25% to the management company, which is their parent company, out of that $100 before the government of Liberia collect taxes on the remaining before the government of Liberia gets its share, which is 4% or 5% royalties from that $100. At that structure, you are literally robbing the government. And because of that structure, another firm was partner in that agreement. They exited because they know at that structure they would be in that partnership, but they will not make any money, right? Those were the kind of structure that we had on those agreements. And we just blindly just went and put pen to paper, sign them, sign them, sign them, sign them, sign them, without understanding the structure. That you stay here, yes, you will get money, but at the point where the management company has already collected its share and whatever's left is what you're getting your share on, your royalty on, before whatever uh little clauses they put in there for those 1.5 million, 3 million here before it goes out to the community. And for me, I think those little 1.5 money that they put in there as little clauses to develop those counties, those are just to keep the people hush. At the end, the leave from there, none of those places will be developed, and those roads that they were building were just to transport those minerals out of those counties. Two of those concessions. When I read them, I kept going back and forth to make sure this was actually a real concession that we actually signed. A sovereign nation signs with a company, and without even identifying the kind of violation or manipulation that they use to exploit us of our own minerals. But yet we signed it. Musa Dean's signature was on that. It was signed, and somebody within the United Party sent that to me. I will send it to you after that. That's the kind of exploitation we have in our country. That's the kind of exploitation of those 66 concession. So if somebody tell you about, oh, we have concession, we getting money, it's just pennies on a dollar. It's just penny on a dollar. So I will leave that there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So what are we? We're over the hour here. I think we have one more. I don't know if we go through this comment and then we finish the rest of the questions. Um, okay. So Larry's busy here. He said, depending on who gets elected, Liberia may be worse than they are today. Um, I agree with him. And then he said, so how would the candidates stabilize the Liberian dollar and diversify the economy to avoid growth in in the extractive sectors without human development on the ground? That's a great question. Do I don't know if you have an answer for that. I don't. You know.
Well, what gives a currency its value
Yeah.
is,
Production.
yeah, within that country. So
Yeah.
the only way that the Liberian dollar will stabilize if we increase production. How do we increase production? Okay, we need investment. How do we get investment? Well, other than taking out projects, government engaging in projects itself, it has to encourage private sector development.
Yeah.
And this is this is one of the where a lot of focus should be. Um, if I looked at this document that they did here, improve this, improve that,
Hmm.
but I saw nothing really about private sector development.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that is a key factor if you want to develop the
Stabilize your
economy.
dollars. Right.
So with this missing, I agree with Larry's statement that depending on who gets elected, if somebody's not even that hasn't even identified how crucial it is to develop our private sector, then how they're not going to do anything. It's evident. that there's nothing going to be done. Government cannot handle it by themselves. You know, and it is going to be super. It's going to be frustrating, as from President Sirleaf said. It's going to be frustrating. But when you have targeted the right thing to develop your country, then you have better results. I don't know. It's me. I don't hear you.
Yes, I was muted. I said no. As I was saying, you muted. I mean, you nailed it. The value of the dollar that is in a country is backed by two things. One, the good faith of the government that prints it. Two, and the production within our country to gives us value. If you have one of those things missing, that power, that money becomes useless in our case. Yes, in our case, we print money. The government is saying that it has, good faith that it will honor, it backs it. But at the same time, on the production side, we're lacking that piece of it. So, and as you rightly pointed out, there's nothing in our document that we read about private sector uh, job creation or strengthening the private sector in whatsoever. As I said, like I think I didn't want to go that route, but I think as you said it's an undergrad can do a better job writing a better paper than what was put out. And this is no disrespect to them. This is just what they just put out. Is to say it's garbage is an understatement. It's like some places, literally, you go through the document, just one paragraph, like maybe three, four, five sentences of one paragraph, and then it jump from there to go to another one. So with that level of writing, with that level of putting stuff together, I don't see how you're able to, really convince or convey to anyone what you are trying to do on the grand scheme of things when it comes to an entire country economy. So you're just BSing your way through um, hoping that people think that this is a good document, but this is not. I'm sorry. Uh, and I don't think we have any more comments here. So the last one it says, okay, it said I would take 1 million and then give you 100 bucks. Library keep electing bad leaders. I think this was regarding the concession uh, talk that we had. So one more question and then we'll wrap up here. Um,
Okay.
all right. So I think we may have discussed this, but since we had it right now, I'll just put it here. How do we? So since we, not we since but we do believe we know that the document that we're reading here doesn't do a good job in terms of or at all in terms of how to uh, create an economic that create jobs, an economy that create jobs. How do you think that can be done? How do we think we can, or any candidate, or if you were to talk to these people that wrote this piece of document here, what would you think they should put in it in terms of how to create an economy that spurs job growth?
Could you do? So how do we create an economy that spur
It's supposed to
jobs?
be
Huh?
an economy that creates jobs, right? Right,
Hmm.
right.
Again, it's it's uh, motivating the business segment.
Hmm.
I was back home and I talked to some key business people.
Hmm.
As we know, the Lebanese are some of the most substantial business people in the country,
Hmm.
and they are now on pause.
Wow.
They don't, because they're not too sure what's going to happen, and so they're not putting a lot of investment in the country.
Hmm.
One thing they mentioned to me: if we have the judicial system meting out justice, in other words, if they have to go to court, they want to be able to get justice from our system. If they
Right.
had that confidence, you know, that they will, uh, 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 you know, get justice, they will put more into the country.
Yeah.
So
So justice
the
system
answer
is
to your
right.
question is improve the legal, the justice system so
Hmm.
that people have confidence that they will get proper redress
Hmm.
if their investment goes awry.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Yeah. So I think that is absolutely true. And I'm glad you mentioned that you talked to key business people in our country when you went.
yep.
And it's, you know, I'm glad you actually mentioned that as well. We kind of rely, and I'm a big, it's not that I don't like the IMF or the World Bank. It's just that the level or the degree to which we buy into everything that puts out that gets to me in our country, the level to which we take verbatim as if this was the Bible of economic activity in your country that the IMF put out. The way we kind of cling to that is what gets me. And the reason why you said that because every year the IMF puts out this job growth. This is how much the economy will grow by. These are potential, right? We take that without doing our own survey, without the central bank doing its own survey. We just take those numbers that the IMF and the World Bank put out, and now we put those in paper. The reason why I brought that up is because you said that exactly how I think we ourselves as a country can measure that. Just what you did when you went back to Liberia, talk to the business people, this is what the central bank here does. They call it the beige book. The beige book report that comes out every quarter, Jimmy, what they
Hmm.
do, they exactly what you did when you went to Liberia. They pick up phone and call business people. Hey, what are you what are you thinking right now? What are you ordering right now? Are you ordering heavy equipment? You know, all of those things will give you a good assessment of people behavior, right? The business people behavior of what they think the economy is. Now, let's say if you're running a business and I call you, I say, Jimmy, how is things going right now? You say, oh, Gabriel, things are going great. Matter of fact, we have three, four, five orders of heavy duty machinery on the way right now. Or it could be another case where I call you, you can say, Gabriel, I'm sorry, but we don't understand what is happening in the economy right now with the rate and everything's going on. So we're kind of holding off. These economies are the central banks that does the beige book. They will take that and say, okay, they take that, they make those calls to businesses and they get a good sense of what is happening in the economy. This is how they put out the beige book. And that beige book that comes out every quarter is people business owner in a country, they read it because it gives them a good sense of what is happening, which is exactly what you did when you went to Liberia. The reason why I said that because the central bank can do that as well. Call business people or even go to them. Hey, how are things looking right now? You will get a better sense of your own economy than taking what the IMF and the World Bank is putting out, sitting in some ivory tower without knowing exactly what is happening in your economy, but you're taking what they're telling you about your economy and taking that as if it is the holy grail of economic papers, right? So that's what I wanted to put out. But in terms of what I believe, the economy needs to what, what kind of economy we need to create jobs. You mentioned that justice. You know, we have commercial courts. As I was told, we have commercial court now. So if you and I get business people get into a dispute, we don't go into the regular courts. We go through the commercial court to dispute that. But how effective is that? You know, and not just being effective. Are you because you have more money? Will you be able to just pay the judge and then the judge rule in your favor? That's not fair to me, right? And this is why that when you talk to that business person, they said that it's not that they don't know that the commercial code is there. They know it's there, but they just know that the system within itself isn't operating as it's supposed to. The other thing is one of the things that I'm a big proponent of is access to finance and access to market, access to capital, access to market. The banks we have in Liberia are not well capitalized to do what they're supposed to do. One, even if they were, they are not doing what they're supposed to do. We have a big non-performing loan crisis in our country right now. And I argue with some guy, you know, on from Liberia on this. Supposedly he's a doctor. I don't know. He's an local economist there, and he said that the banks are in good shape, that they're fine. And I say, if they're fine, why we have a non-performing loan problem? If we're fine, if they're fine, why is it if the central bank cannot help the banks solve the non-performing loan crisis? This is just one exposure problem and an underwriting problem. If you underwrite your loan effectively, you will have less, you will have non-performing loan, but it won't be to the magnitude that we have right now. One. Two, if you regulate bank correctly, they will not, all the banks will not be going after the people that work in the government. They will diversify so that way when you default in one sector, it doesn't impact the entire bank. You know, so here now we're going back and forth on that. But I believe access to capital, not just for the Lebanese in the country, the business people in our country, but for every mom and pop business in our country or any entrepreneur in our country that want to do business. Even if they're not getting it through the bank, we should have a subsidiary financial system, right? That is able to meet the needs. Over here in the States, we have the banking sector. They don't do a lot of lending to regular businesses, but we have the private equity side. We have the quasi government and entities, the SBA here, right? You right now, if you get up, you say you want to go do a business because you may not have all the collateral, the SBA would give you, they'll guarantee that loan either 50% or 75%. Or if you're even buying real estate to a certain degree to use that for business, up to 90%. So the only risk the bank is taking that underwrite that loan is 10%. So that gives a lot of people the confidence to start businesses, to go and be innovative because they know the assets is there. Even if you can't get in the private sector, there's the ability to go to the government route. We lack that in Liberia, and none of this plan that we're going through has any of that. But for me, for the country that we have right now at this very moment, in order to get to that level where we create jobs, where if I come out of high school or college, you know, graduate at the University of Liberia, AME, or whatever you call the other university, AMEU, I should be able to get a job somewhere. Even if I can't find it in in Monrovia, I can go to any of these other county, go to Maryland, go to Lofa, go to Bond County. There should be companies there partnering with this university, you know, to be able to hire them directly out of college. We do not have that. We've never had that. This is why everybody graduate. Even when we used to do well in the 60s, people graduate, they leave, and they come to the States. They go abroad to work, you know. So that's the country that I believe we need. And that's the kind of plan I believe that needs to be put in place in order to create Liberia that compete where its peers regionally. Hopefully we can tip our toes on the global scales. But I will leave that for there. I will leave that out there for now. Yeah. So I think we have two more comments. Maybe we can jump into that and then um, I think there's three. Uh, this is Oxford, Oxford bro. Maybe he went to Oxford. He said, what do you guys think about the talk of Exxon buying four of our oil blocks? Jimmy, are you aware of this? Or was it before? I think you're muted. Jimmy, I can't hear you. You're muted.
Yes, I'm sorry, I was muted. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have heard about this. They have applied for 4 blocks. And to address Oxford question, you know, It has been said that oil can be a curse as
Hmm.
much as it's a resource. It's a curse because there's a lot of things that around oil extraction.
Hmm.
A lot of deals, a lot of shady stuff goes around.
Hmm.
First of all, oil extraction, especially the offshore type of extraction, is very, very, very expensive. I'm talking about more than $1 million a day just to extract it. So if it's not in large commercial quantities, it's almost not worth it. So they bought 5 blocks to do some prospecting.
Hmm.
How much are we going to gain if they do find a substantial amount of oil? It's unsure. Again, this is the extractive industry. Unless we can use the proceeds to develop, to carry on economic development in our country, it will be just another Bummy Hills where when Bummy, who are that? Who is that in Bummy Hills?
Uh, Tyler,
Um,
is it not?
no, no, there was one company back in the day during Tubman time out in Bummy Hills, and when they left, they just left a big hole in the ground.
Yeah.
They never carried out, not even been nothing in there. So we have to be careful. Our leaders, the members of the legislature, the executives, and the judicial system, they must ensure that these this oil, the extractive industry plows back economic development within the country,
Yeah.
and not just a few people benefit from our resources, but generations to come benefit. And that's what we have to do. And I don't know how much we are going to get because, like I said, um, offshore drilling is very expensive. But no matter what we get into when it comes to the extractive industries, it must manifest in economic development.
Yeah. So for me, I think the 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 way I look at this, and people might think, hey, maybe you're too, we're not there yet. I believe we can, I don't know if this is, if they found oil there and they want to develop it. Oxford, bro, I don't know your real name. I don't know if they found oil in Liberia and they want to develop it, or this is just an exploration that they want to take on. Now, if we found oil in Liberia on those 4 blocks and they want to develop it, and we know that is, uh, production level capacity, I believe we can go the Uganda route. Hold on, and maybe explore a level to which we can process some of that oil, in Liberia. Uganda held on to that oil, I think, up to since 2013 or 14, they discovered that, or maybe earlier than that, right? They have just begun, they just signed an agreement with one of China's Chinese company to start exploring it, right? That's one, right? We can either do that to hold off to say, hey, let's own some of the supply chain, right? To process it in Liberia. One, if we can't get that because we lack, from a realistic standpoint, we lack the human capital, development and technical skill to be able to hire engineers in Liberia to develop it there. You know, uh, then we can do what, like Jimmy said, that that exploration just doesn't become another, hey, we take your oil, we bring it to another country and go with it, but that the proceeds that we will get from that, and make sure, one, we structure this deal this time perfectly than what we did before with those 66 concessions. We can learn from those mistakes that we made. We make sure with these concessions, these 4 blocks, we structure those deals and get enough proceed from it. And the proceed that we get from that, we earmark it to some key infrastructure things. Let's say we can use it to build the entire whatever blocks they're doing, the entire highway in our county, right? Highway system. It doesn't have to be the highway connecting. It can just be the highway, the road system in our county. Just use that proceed to just develop the road system in our county, right? Or we can earmark it to something else. But we should put the proceeds of that oil money to use as opposed to it just being going into somebody's pocket again. 66 concession up to now, nobody know what we got from that. So that's what I'm not aware of that. This is mine. I mean, it's first time learning about this. So um, Emmanuel has a comment here. He said, "Good economy starts with implementing the rule of law." And I've been wanting to trying to get Dr. Paibo on this show, but I don't know. He said, "Good governance, law and order, and diversification of the economy will make the private sector to spur growth." Right, absolutely. And then we have Emmanuel. He said, "One of the key sector banks in Liberia have non-performing loans. The banking sector is largely due to lack of electronic banking system, no transparency." There you go. Um, any thoughts on this comment before we wrap up?
No, I mean, the digitizing Liberia should be one of the goals of any incoming administration. We're
Hmm.
still maybe we're still largely a cash in hand economy, and it doesn't facilitate commerce today. Most of the world is business transactions are conducted online. So yeah, we've introduced mobile transfers now, but we're still far from it. There's much more we need to do um, to improve our digital footprint in the country. Um, all there's a lot of opportunities available. Most of the stores are not online, and so there's tons of opportunities. What it does require is stable electricity. That is a key point because these things depend on power to keep functioning. So to achieve, uh, you know, digitization, we need to first establish reliable networks, reliable power networks, and so that these systems will be reliable. So
Yeah,
yeah, we got some steps. There are a lot of things we have to do, and that is why we're looking forward to see people come forward who have the ideas or at least the desire to improve improve love and improve Liberia.
yeah,
We got so much work to do.
yeah, yeah. I think that I don't have anything to say to that. I think that that brings up to the end of the show today. Um,
Mhm.
before we wrap up, what are your you know parting comments? It could be anything we talked about. It could be on one of the comments. It could
Yeah,
be on the
yeah.
policy as
So
well.
so to conclude, it is the economics of Liberia is what we really need to address.
Hmm.
We have to improve the lot of people,
Yeah.
improve their livelihoods. They're living on less than $2 a day.
Hmm.
So we do have to improve the economic state, but to improve the economic state requires two things. You need to restore law and order, and that means you have to evoke a strong penal code for violators. So if you're not prepared to put people in jail, be he your relative, your close friend, because I've heard the comment, we all know each other in Liberia, so what? So people can get away with
Yep.
anything?
Yep. Yep.
No. To discipline people from stealing requires strong penal action. And so whoever is coming, if you're not ready to put people in jail, you're not going to do anything,
Yeah.
because that has to be addressed. Because no matter how you build the economy, if it got leaks, if it's leaking somewhere, you'll be back to square one. So whoever's coming, they better know what they do. Or
Yeah.
or even if the current administration, if they want to really change Liberia, then they will have to start punishing people for wrongdoings.
Yeah. No, thank you. Um, I think it's very noted, and I think that's something that we've lacked on. I think that you mentioned that earlier in the show that even Ellen herself, the former president, said that she kind of failed on that. She called it the boogeyman, right? We're not being able to you know fight corruption, but also you're not being able to make an example out of somebody who has been accused of being corrupt. Um, so I'm glad you mentioned that. My take on this, as I will give an analogy. If you're in a class, and well, at least in the American system here, if you take a test or midterm, let me say not test, a midterm, which is a test, right? Middle of the term test, right? And or any test during the class, and let's say you fail, right? Or you fail the midterm. Usually the final, the professor would tell you you got to bring your A game on the final, or else you will not pass the class, right? That because you already failed the midterm, right? So from an average standpoint, you got zero. So you have to score at least A or 100 on the final in order to pass. And the reason why I say this is because of this unity party plan we're looking at. If you look at their history, the last 12 years, right, what they did is was a failure, to say the least. So if you have that record now as someone who failed previously, and this is not just for me. I know a lot of good people in the former Unity Party, and I know some of them are very good, but collectively as a body, that party is considered a failure. Don't come to me. Go talk to your Liberian people. They will tell you that, right? If that is the case, knowing that that sentiment lies within the heart of the people that they saw your previous government as a failure, you now trying to come in on the second term to run in this administration, the paper you're supposed to put out, the economic paper you're supposed to put out, which that we're reading right now, the party, the members of your party, the people that the technical people you're supposed to have around you, supposed to be the top notch. The party, the paper you put out that we're reading right here now, and as we're calling it, this is, some of us could have done a better job as an undergrad writing a better paper than this thing that you guys put out here. Is supposed to be the top notch, because this is somebody now who has a record, who say, hey, I'm coming, look at how better I have gotten, look at what I think I can do, and this is how I'm going to do it. But this is again somebody's coming into the final, repeating the same mistake they made in the midterm, which they failed, and you're coming at this, performing at this level. That's going to tell me that you're not going to pass this class in general. I mean, if you end up this administration end up coming to power, there is nothing better we should expect from them than what they have done before, which is failed. If we're using this past test analogy here, for me, and I think that's where I was, when I got this document and I was going through it, I expected a lot from it, because we kept saying, hey, these people don't have a document. So I said, hey, now that they have a document, it has to be good. It has to be top notch, because they've hid it for a long time. So now that they're putting this thing out, is supposed to be the best, but it is missing some key information on the economy. Is missing good the how of how things are getting done. As I said, you read. I hope some of you guys can go on the website. Is there? Um, some of them are just one page, one 5 sentences paragraph, and you cannot build an economy with that. You cannot build an economy. You cannot convince someone like myself or Jimmy or some of those technical guys out there to say this is what you're going to sell to the people and they're going to buy it. Yes, we understand the entire library is, the literacy level is not up there, so you might get by, doing, as we call the burden of operating in a democracy, right? But you cannot go on and bring this kind of document in front of people. Liberia needs better. Liberia needs jobs, and that's what we need to focus on. Any candidate that is coming, they need to focus on job, the justice system, fighting corruption, and making sure at least, even if you can bring us to, you know, the top of the frontier market, at least build a foundation where the next person who will come on can bring us to that level. But from what we're seeing on this document, it is missing anything that can convince anybody to think that this document can do anything, or the people that put this document together have any idea what they're doing at all. I doubt you guys even know what you're doing. I'm sorry. And if you doubt that, as I said, we can do a second show. You can come out here to defend yourself. We're more than open to take you on. And I will leave it on there for now. Um, Without further ado, and I think that brings us to the end of the show. Uh, Thank you for watching, wherever you were watching from. And some of you may have been watching, you may not offer comments. We'll see you next Saturday. And hopefully you enjoy the show and enjoy the rest of your weekend. It's a long weekend, so make use of it. This
Yeah.
might be the longest weekend you have, and the most over here where I am is very sunny here, so take advantage of it and enjoy your weekend. All right. And with that, we're going to leave you with our favorite song that says we are all Liberians. Whether you like what we said on here or not, um, whether you think we were just blowing smoke up in the air, one thing that is true, it is that we're all Liberians. Whether you're Liberian on here or not, we like to say that we're all Liberians. So we will leave you with that song and enjoy your weekend, as we said. Ciao.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Either you raise it or we want. Liberia, oh. Either you raise it or we want. Liberia, be Liberian. Oh, Liberia, oh. Our father. Africa.